YouTube, what's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and I mean, really? I get to commentate Carthage for once. I know, it's a dream come true. It's been a while. That's right, so we got a Suebi Carthage against Epirus Kush. Kush is actually a faction I'm a little less than familiar with because they came so late into Rome 2. By that point, I was fairly heavy into Warhammer. I'll do my best with them to kind of feel it out. As for Carthage, they do have a couple of Balearic Slingers. These are excellent long-range skirmishing units. They're some of the highest damage slingers in the game. So remember, we had the cheap slingers, which were at a missile damage of 20, a better one at 23. These guys are all the way up at 29. So Balearic Slingers are very dangerous. There's some late Libyan hoplites giving a front line. These guys don't have javelins, but they actually have some pretty decent armor and stopping power as far as just being as cheap as they are. And then behind them, we're going to have Libyan infantry, which is a very heavy melee infantry. They aren't great. Like, they'll get beat by a legionary. They'll get beat by sometimes even mid-tier barbarian swords, but there are certain matchups in which you can make them usable. And then there are a couple of African pikemen to help hold the flanks. And then there's some mercenary Samnite warriors out on these flanks as well. Now, a mercenary Samnite warrior is a more defensive unit, very heavily armored. They don't do a ton of damage, but again, they're just meant to hold for a long time. Now, Carthaginian cavalry is a decent kind of medium cavalry, and there's also some Scutari cavalry mixed in with them. I believe Scutari cavalry do a little bit better charge, maybe a little less survivable than the Carthaginian cav, but Carthaginian cav, again, not bad. We've got a general's bodyguard back here. Suebi are rocking spear wall up front and spear levy to kind of block off cavalry charges, and Epirus, they'll definitely have to watch for that. Epirus has some pretty nice shock cavalry if they want to use it. We got some Germanic slingers in a skirmish line, and then wolf warriors here. Man, it's been a long time. The Suebi have a lot of lighter infantry units, but very interesting ones at that. These wolf warriors, I believe, have a is it special scare? Yeah, they have the scare ability. So we've got sword masters here as well, which is a kind of heavy infantry, very good infantry in general, and they're mixed with these wolf warriors all across the line here. And then we got a noble rider general, so it's a fairly light infantry build, but they are up against Kush and Epirus, so they may be a little less worried about heavier infantry. Now we've got Kushite slave spearmen on a front line. I, again, don't know if these guys have javelins, and they have slave slingers behind them, which will numbers-wise outmatch the Balearic Slingers, but damage-wise they'll be heavily outmatched. I just don't know how that'll play out, because that's a 2-to-1, and I'm not sure that that's actually a great skirmish for the Balearic Slingers. They may just get overwhelmed by numbers. Behind that, we've got some Shotel warriors, which is a heavy infantry with kind of a sickle, scythe type thing there. Honestly, don't remember the weapon stats on this thing, but it looks like a decent heavy infantry, especially if it's going to be matching up against Libyan hoplites and Libyan infantry. So, and then we've got these disciples of Apodimek. These guys are pretty cool. They have huge melee attack. They don't do great damage, but they're going to get a lot of hits in a fight, so they will be a damage dealer. They also have this headhunt ability, which is going to give them even more attack and morale for a short period of time, probably at the cost of vigor, or in this case, let's see, vigor. Oh, hang on. Whoa, man, these wolf warriors just got leveled by a Royal Hellenic cavalry. I'm going to actually slow this down for just a second so we can catch more of this. And then there was an Aspis companion cavalry here. And remember that these guys are actually a melee cavalry. This is not a shock cavalry, I don't believe. Yeah, no, this is a melee cavalry. You can see their health there, the armor, and then the melee attack. So very, very deadly unit in a long-term melee against like kind of lighter infantry. They're being countered by Carthaginian cav and noble riders. They want to get out of there, but they picked up 64 kills really quickly. And then the Hellenic Royal Cavalry also picked up 73 kills. There's another Aspis cavalry over here, and then there's some Tarentine cavalry, which is a nice missile cav, and then some Germanic scout riders, mercenary Samnites for the infantry, and then we're going to see militia hoplites and a lot of levy pikemen. So very cheap infantry being supported by very heavy cavalry. And remember here that the red team is on the ropes. This is a best of 5, and they are down 2. If you haven't seen the other battles, go check it out. We've got a brutal fight breaking out over here I'm going to try and do my best to keep an eye on this. You got Mercenary Sam Knights and Shotel Warriors now coming in against Swordmasters. Swordmasters are going to be a tough nut to crack here. They are outnumbered, though, and there's some Levy Pikes in the vicinities. For those not super familiar with Pikes, Pikes can be a bit wonky in this game. They are typically very effective from the front, but it's hard to keep them from getting outflanked. And you can see that sometimes they'll have a lot of formation issues. If you use formation attack, it makes them even less flexible, but if you don't, they can get spread out all over the place. So you can see this Levy Pikeman just getting absolutely slaughtered because its formation is all out of whack. So Pikes are kind of less than reliable, would be the way that it's probably best said. See here, the Balearic Slingers are still here, and there's Carthaginian cavalry working towards the flank. There is some armored desert cavalry here. I would imagine these two units would be fairly closely matched in terms of their capability. I've always been disappointed in Carthaginian cavalry in this game. I don't feel that it was represented well, especially for being quite legendary. I feel like that the Carthaginian faction should have access to a few more of the different Numidian types of cavalry that are present for some of the other factions, and it would make them a lot more interesting. But that was one thing that I've always really disliked about Carthage in this game. Wow, those Libyan infantry just got plowed by a desert cavalry. Really blocked their charge, and it's going to give the charge to these Shotel warriors. So that was a very nice play there. It's a very nice play. Let's check out this fight over here, see if the Suebi are holding up. And honestly, it looks like they are holding up, at least for the moment. But I mean, a lot of Suebi infantry is taking a bit of a beating. There's a Wolf Warrior here. It should do pretty solid against Militia Hoplites. Even though they're a very heavy unit, they don't have very good stats. And then the Swordmasters here are getting support from all the Slingers. There's a lot of Tarentine cavalry still rolling around, but they'll be kept in check by the Germanic Scout Riders. They won't really be able to break that flank. And I kind of like this play here, just letting the heavy cavalry rest in the back. I mean, you need to use them, but at the same time, you don't want to overcommit. And if these guys have more energy, they should be able to fight better. Epirus is sending reinforcements over here to try and help crush the Suebi, while the Kush are trying to hold their own on this flank. There is some mercenary Samnite warriors and Shotel warriors duking it out. And then we got some Scutari Cav who managed to put down a armored desert cavalry. And then there's a Kushite Royal Guard here. Let's take a look at it. Oh my gosh, they got some serious melee attack and some really potent weapon damage, dude. This is going to be a... wow. This is going to be a very tough melee cavalry for Carthage to deal with. Very tough melee cavalry. It's going to shred Carthaginian Cav. You can see some late Libyan Hoplites moving out there to support him. They will need to. The stats on that Royal Cavalry were pretty nuts. Seeing a lot of maneuvering here by Epirus. Let's kind of see if we can spot where their heavy cavalry is moving. It's moving left right now, so their two Aspis Cav and their Hellenic Royal Cavalry are all moving to their left, to the right of the yellow and blue bannered team here. This Kushite Royal Guard is just slaughtering, but now that these Libyan Hoplites are here, it really needs to get out, and that may be the cover they're getting here from the Armored Desert Cavalry to pull out. Yes, that's what's happening, and that was a good play. These Libyan Hoplites are going to be way too much for those heavy cavalry to cut through. They have really good armor, and they won't kill cavalry quick, but they will kill it. So it's something to be aware of. See Noble Riders putting some charges into the Sam Knights, mercenary Italian swords, and Levy Pikes. The Riders are going to have to watch out for the Pikes. If they get caught on the front of the Pikes, they will die very quickly. There's a lot of Germanic Slingers back here left. There's some Slave Slingers and Greek Slingers still back over here as well. They're not actually called Greek Slingers. I'm just calling them that to separate them a bit here. The Armored Desert Cavalry paid the price for getting their lord out of that fight, but they did manage to do it. You can see the Hoplites bracing here because they're getting charged by Aspis. As long as the Aspis doesn't stay in the fight for a long time, they should do okay, but you can see that their weapon damage is very heavy. Or, sorry, their melee attack is very heavy, and they're going to kill some Libyan Hoplites and then just kind of get out of there. They're going to probably try and cycle. Look right here, Aspis Cavalry hitting its element here. As long as they stay away from the African Pikes, this is a pretty good support position here. And here you can see the African Pikes having no problem holding back the disciples of Epidemic. I'm probably going to get that wrong. This reminds me that someone in the game has croc warriors too, like crocodiles. It's like a prelude to Croxagores or something, I guess. This Kushite Royal Guard is such a beast of a cavalry. It's already got 90 kills. Let's check out where that Hellenic cavalry is. Here's the Hellenic Royal Guard or Hellenic Royal Cavalry sitting at 120 kills and pretty healthy. This Aspis has 80 kills, and this one has 128, but it's starting to take a bit of a shellacking, but I mean, it's getting some solid charges. This Libyan infantry is going to rue the day this is happening. Carthaginian Cav and a bodyguard being attacked by the Royal Cav. There's a lot of sling fire coming in here as well, and the Royal Cav is starting to take some pretty solid damage, but look, here comes Aspis and Kushite Slave Spearmen as well, so this fight's going to get crazy. It's going to get ugly real quick, actually. Eesh, yeah, the Kushite Royal Guard Cav not liking this fight at the moment. So it looks like a lot of them pulling back. Suebi still have a lot of skirmishers here, and it is really costing Epirus big time. Yeah, those Suebi skirmishers and Germanic horsemen, or Germanic scouts, are just really giving it to Epirus over here right now. And this Hellenic Royal Cavalry, as tough as it is now going to start facing a numbers issue. Some armored desert riders and Tarentine Cav coming in to help out, but this shot cavalry is going to get shredded by Germanic scout riders. It is not a good place to be for the Hellenic Royal Cav. They don't have a shield, and they have fairly low health for a cavalry unit, so they're gonna get eaten alive. I say fairly low health. It's not super low, but it's not like a heavy cavalry with shields and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's actually looking really good for Carthage and Suebi in this one, and that means that it's Bobi and, man, I'm going to forget his teammate here, but Bobi's team looks like they're very well going to take the tournament here with this one. This is a pretty epic matchup. I like this. Epirus and Kush versus Carthage and Suebi. None of these are like the highest tier power factions in the game. Now, Suebi can be pretty good if used in the right hands, especially in a 1v1. A little harder probably to get them effective than a 2v2, maybe. Kind of depends on how they're used, but Suebi does have a lot of interesting scare and abilities and cool units, but they're a little bit what do you call it, squishier than some of the other barbarian factions in terms of their just infantry power. They take a little more finesse to use properly. See what's left of the Hellenic cavalry. They did a very impressive job early on, but again, the numbers kind of just not looking good here. There's African pikes that are very healthy. There are some skirmishers on the other side. I don't know if they have ammo, but they're going to be getting harassed by Germanic scout riders. And if the scout riders are out of javelins, then they'll have a bit of problem here. And I do think they may be out of javelins because they're not throwing any at the Aspis Cav. But there is some Carthaginian cavalry to help, and Carthaginian Cav would actually do decent against this Aspis Cav here. Just kind of checking out the battlefield as best I can here to soak in the whole situation. But like I said, the situation looks pretty bad for the red bordered team. They got red borders on their banner here. I think it's Sofado and Hamilkar Barca that are on the other side. If I remember the names right. I could get it wrong. We'll see the screen here in a minute. Yeah, here comes the Germanic Scout Riders. These guys are actually pretty decent in melee against these light skirmishers. That's a nice secondary function of Germanic Scout Riders after their javelins, is they're pretty effective at cleaning up skirmishers. Look at this. We got a general on general fight over here. The Hellenic Royal General not wanting to be outdone by the barbarian scum. And I think they're going to actually get back here and kill him. Yeah, the Noble Rider gets mopped up. So the Hellenic Royal Cavalry there holding together the Greek pride despite the Pyrrhic, or the defeat coming for Epirus. Gotta watch out to see if these guys have javelins. I didn't see any javelins coming off of them. They were probably close enough to throw them at some point there. You can see the Kushite Royal Cavalry trying to push them out, but it's, there are skirmishers left, but if these guys don't have ammunition and a way to keep using it, then this fight is over. And honestly, they probably don't have an ammunition to rip through two very healthy African pike units. Looks like the Balearic Slingers have their daggers out, so they've thrown all their ammunition. And we're just going to see kind of a final matchup here. The power bar definitely favoring Bobi's team here. And it should. I don't see a way to pull this one back for the other team. So it looks like the tournament's going to go to Bobi and his teammate, and I apologize for forgetting the name. I'm sure it'll come to me here in just a moment whenever I see it. But yeah, this has been a bunch of really fun battles. Game 2 in particular was crazy close. This was a fun game, kind of close to my heart here because I love the factions here. Epirus is really fun to play. Carthage is fun to play. Suebi is fun to play, and then Kush is very different. I didn't play them a ton, but they're very different factions, so it's kind of cool to see the final game be these factions that don't always get the spotlight when it comes to just the factions that can just fight in a big, what do you call it, a slobber knocker, I guess, if you're looking for a hillbilly word. That type of fight, a big boy fight, right? These factions struggle a little more in those fights. Though Carthage, to be fair, if you can ever get the elephants to pay off, that's how Carthage makes up for its lack of infantry, and that's, I think, kind of the way the balance was intended early in this game. But later on in this game, when just about every single unit in the game picked up javelins, elephants just took a nerf by the nature of the game, and it was really kind of sad. Like, basically every cheap tier spear unit or sword unit with javelins can almost immediately destroy a unit of elephants. And so to use elephants in this game, you have to be very patient, and you have to screen off enemy infantry very well. You have to wait for them to be entirely engaged, and then you have to hope for a really good side angle to come through there. So it's very difficult to do, to use elephants. Elephants really got nerfed with the inclusion of too many javelins. And so I kind of feel like that's something that should have been addressed at some point in this game. It probably never will be at this point, but I really do feel like they should go back into this game and take away javelins from a lot of the cheap spear units. It makes them too powerful against cavalry, and so it basically flips the whole balance of the game. And a lot of people say that, oh, well, this game's too focused on heavy infantry. Well, part of the reason why it's so focused on heavy infantry is because cavalry can be fairly easily countered with cheap units that have javelins, or any unit with javelins. Now, is cavalry completely ineffective in this game? Absolutely not. No, but it doesn't hold the same type of power that it does in, say, like a Total War Attila type title, where cavalry was just absolutely beast mode, and then in, say, like Warhammer, where cavalry is very strong versus infantry in the right circumstances, right? And so in Rome 2, yes, cavalry can be very effective, but it can also be countered very effectively by cheap spear units with javelins. Spear units actually don't do great in melee against cavalry. They're slow to get kills most of the time, unless they have cavalry counter tactics or something like that. But the javelins will get kills very quickly and eat away a unit very quickly. So is the Duke and Bobi. Sorry, I forgot Duke. Nice Suebi play, by the way. Enjoyed that one. The Suebi, like I said, are a faction, definitely requires a little bit of massaging and finesse to get it right. He did have one unit of Cimbri bow women there that I missed going through. That's a really cool bow unit that we didn't get to see. If I remember right, I think these are armed, like secondary armed with a spear, if I remember right, which is a really cool unit indeed. And then let's take a look at all the kills here. Nice work here from the Germanic Scout Riders. All these units very effective for the Duke, so he did a good job. His infantry didn't win per se in these fights, but it did what it needed to do. It fought well, it killed a lot of enemy infantry, and kept all the skirmishers alive and the cavalry, which ended up winning the fight for the Duke. And then Bobi here, fun play with Carthage. I like the build. A couple of pikes provide a nice element here to help support the otherwise less than stellar Carthaginian infantry. So if you combine these pikes with one of the other infantry units, if you get the opportunity, kind of like he did, you can see the pikes were working through another infantry unit. It can help make those units win their fight. Again, pikes are a little bit risky at times, but these two did very well in this fight, very well indeed. And then the Balearic Slingers also ended up doing some very nice work. And then just, a nice use of the Libyans and the Sam Knights. I like late Libyan hoplites. They, for the price, are pretty good bang for the buck. It's one of Carthage's better value type units as far as bang for the buck. And then Sofado here with Kush. Cool play with the cavalry. This Kushite Royal Guard is an absolute beast. I mean, this is an amazing cavalry unit. They had spectacular stats. That's actually, if I remember right, some of the best stats that I've seen on a melee cavalry in terms of attack and stuff like that. And then these armored desert cavalry, one of them ended up doing pretty well in there in terms of kills. The slingers managed to get some decent work done. I'm sure these were cheap, and so whatever you get out of them isn't bad. A couple of the Shotel warriors bringing home some chevrons here with some decent kills. The others gotten defeated there, and obviously he wasn't able to overcome Carthage's infantry here either. So then Hamilkar Barca, I mean, this cav play early on was pretty dang awesome. This Aspis cav and the Hellenic Royal Cavalry did some pretty major ownage on a couple of Suebi units early on, and that was a pretty sweet charge. These Aspis cavalry are very kind of a niche unit, and I mean, against these factions like Carthage and against Carthage and Suebi, I think that it's a cool unit to pick, and definitely has the potential to get some work done. Tarentine cavalry are always a very nice unit to have around to protect these guys from lighter, harassing javelin cavalry. So I like to pick a Tarentine cav, and then slingers are just cheap and provide a good front to skirmish with for a while. So always a decent pick. Levy pikes can obviously end up being a good support for infantry like this. In this case, not all of these levy pikemen ended up in a great position, and their formation got messed up a bunch. But certainly not a bad idea to pick these levy pikes because they're cheap, and if they can get into the right position, they can really help a lot of these infantry do better during a lot of fights. But otherwise, Epirus is left with kind of less than stellar infantry choices for the most part, since pikes never really lived up to their name in this game, which is unfortunate. In fact, that's one of the mods that I use whenever I'm playing this game for myself for fun, is a mod that supposedly helps the pikes do better. And I really enjoy it. If I remember, I'll try and put a link to that in the description. But I may just cover that in a different video and just say what Rome 2 mods I like. And then also use that video for a way for you all to post some of your favorite Rome 2 mods so that we can kind of share some of that in case anybody's wanting to learn more about this game or get into it. The good thing about Rome 2 now is that since it's an older game, computers these days can run it a little easier than they could back in the day, and they can certainly run it easier than Warhammer 2 or Three Kingdoms. And so for that reason, since Rome 2 has so much content in it, it's a pretty cool game. It's still pretty expensive. I think they still sell it for $60 on Steam, which is kind of ridiculous, but occasionally you can catch it on sale. I wouldn't pay $60 for it unless it came with like every DLC. But I mean, if you can get it on sale, which they do occasionally, then it's a pretty good way to go, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Anyway, HeirofCarthage signing out from this series. Really appreciate Bobi and all the other players. Bobi sent it in. Appreciate the other players. This was a lot of fun. It's been a long time since I've gotten to cast some Rome 2, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And we'll be covering some more historical Total War. I think I'm going to try and spend a little time in Shogun 2 here coming up soon. So some of you might be like, you said historical, not just Rome 2. Yep, I know. I think my plans are to do a quick drop by in Shogun 2. Obviously, I'm not done with the historical stuff. I'm going to keep mixing it in. I have been a little bit absent. Father's Day was this last week. Work was very busy last week. I took some time off on the weekend just to spend with my family, obviously, because it was a holiday. And I got a chance to see him. On top of that, work being busy, last week was a little light, but I should be getting back to more normal uploads this week. So a good mix of Warhammer and older Total War content. And hopefully eventually I'm going to get to cover some other new games that I haven't showed before on the channel too. I'll probably prioritize those last though, because they tend to not get as many views, but I still want to do it. Anyway, HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you soon.